Meeting to order. Today is Monday, August 18th, 2014. We're meeting for the purposes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to call roll to establish quorum.
Gutenkopf, absent. Deuter. Here. Dunn.
Here.
Leader. Here. Polumsky. Here. Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin, absent. Healy.
Here.
Honquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner. Here. Wagner.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. On to agenda item number 3, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who has any written communications they would like to submit to the council at this time? If so, I'd ask you to raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. That's the public forum portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the chair and the city council on any topic they so choose. We ask, out of respect for other folks that want to talk and also for the meeting that we are trying to get through this evening, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you run over your 3 minutes, I'll give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap it up. With that said, Clerk Spencer, is there anybody who has signed up for public forum?
Yes, Brian Black, 275 East Cayuga.
Elliot? Is it
Elliot?
Elliot?
Is that? Okay, it's.
Please officially go to the microphone where we need you. We're getting this on audio. Please repeat your name and address.
Are we live? Very good. Full name, Brian Elliott Black, 275 East Cayuga Avenue, Elmhurst, Illinois. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'll be very brief. First, want to express my appreciation to the city for arranging the forum that we just had on the subject of stormwater management. As I believe the city heard, there's a great deal of concern regarding the York Commons project, and I simply want to make 3 key points about it. First and foremost, my wife and I and children have lived here for 15 years. We love the city of Elmhurst. The city was built over a period of many decades through a series of well-considered plans, data-based decisions, and careful investments. And we think that the importance of long-term thinking and long-term investments can't be overstated. We're very concerned, and I think you've heard loud and clear, there's a great deal of concern from a lot of the residents on Cayuga Avenue and in the immediate environs about a project that appears to be a very short-term, limited focus, very expensive project that will ultimately benefit a very small number of people while also creating risks for others, and there is grave concern about that. My second point is this. I think it's important to think about long-term investments. From my perspective, I would rather spend a little bit more money on something that is truly long-term that will benefit far more people. One of the things that the good people that were here earlier heard loud and clear, there's a great deal of interest in understanding the full range of options that have been identified and evaluated and considered. I implore the City Council to please do not make a hasty decision that may be throwing good money after bad. We understand it's $7 million to help 38 homes. That strikes me as absurd. There are 16,000 households, if I understand correctly, in the city of Elmhurst, and we urge the city to be taking a top-down approach, not based just on simulated data, but look at actual damage that occurred in recent storms. That's enormously important. Last point. I read the Burke engineering report from mid-2012. That report included one option that was on the order of $47 million. That sounds like a great deal of money, and indeed it is. But a true long-term investment can typically be supported with long-term debt, 30-year bonds. We know the city of Elmhurst has the ability to do this. And a number like that that sounds enormous generally results in debt service equal to about 1/10 of the original capital cost. So think about this. $47 million, $4.7 million in annual debt service divided, if it were divided evenly over 16,000 homes, works out to about $288 per household. Our family could pay that much money every single year for the next 138 years, and it would still cost us less than the $40,000 worth of damage that we incurred during one single day last April. Bottom line, I urge the city, please do not take precipitous action. It is imperative. You have a fiscal duty, you have an elected duty to look hard at all of the options, not just the costs, but the benefits and the risks, and you need to hear loud and clear from the residents who are so concerned about this. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you.
Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. Had the opportunity to be at the meeting about the TIFs. A lot of legislative reps. Short meeting, half hour, all done. What I was surprised at is all the TIFs have a great deal of debt, but let alone one of the legislators said, well, when do we get our money out of the TIF? And he was informed that, January of next year, they should receive their cut. I truly must be hiring the wrong accountants. I do appreciate the fact that the council has made some kind of step to try to start tackling this flooding. They sent out a couple letters. Well, what I didn't like about the discussion was it's going to cost so much money just to take care of a few homes. Each home will cost X amount. The unfortunate thing about that, gentlemen, is those people that flood have paid. They've taken their private goods since their basement was flooded and throw them in a dumpster, rebuy them, try to get their house back in shape so they can live in it. And then the tax man cometh. You gotta pay your property taxes. And all the time I've ever come to this council, different mayors, different council members, I've never heard this city say, well, maybe we ought to do something for those people. Give them a couple bucks so they can get back to a living standard. And then dollars you talk about, what price do you put on peace of mind? They fear rain. So what dollars and cents is on that? Another thing I've observed is when a city is giving out money to the business community, they show up in force. We need a parking garage. We need money for our remodeling. Council, you got it. No hesitation. But in this whole process of this flooding, I've yet to see any representative of the business community come to this council and say what part they can play in solving it. They're all here for the desire for money, and you liberally give it.
Mr. Pagash, I'd ask you to wrap up your comments.
So let's, Mayor, go to that business community and ask them if they are a part of this town or a special entity.
Last, we have Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline Avenue.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline. First, an announcement. Literacy DuPage is seeking adult tutors. Training sessions begin on September 8th at the Elmhurst Public Library, and it is not too late to register. Additional orientation workshops can be arranged. The phone number to call is 630-416-6699, and the website is literacydupage.org. Next, I see that on the consent agenda tonight we have another appointment to the Zoning Commission, one which I would characterize as an orchestrated reshuffling of insiders. And not a moment too soon, because next week on Thursday, August 28th at 7:30 p.m., the Zoning Commission is scheduled to convene a public hearing on the first application for a 65-foot building in the downtown following approval of the Addison parking garage. That didn't take long, did it? The address for the proposed construction is 195 to 197 Addison. That sounds familiar. Where have we seen that before? Oh yeah, that would be in the parking study from last October, the one that was relied on without question to justify the size of the Addison parking garage. My previous criticism of the parking study had to do with the number of parking spaces that we were told to build per square foot of anticipated new development. I did not take issue with the number of square feet of new development that were projected, but that matter was raised by others, and they were right to question the figures. On page 4 of the parking study, 195 to 197 Addison is site number 1 of 8 redevelopment sites identified by the city. Projected development on that site was listed as 12,000 square feet of restaurant or bar, which would require 126 public parking spaces. Instead, the pending application includes under 2,000 square feet of retail, which would require about 8 public parking spaces. The aggregate total projected redevelopment on the 8 identified locations was over 180,000 square feet. So just over 1% of that will be accounted for in site 1 of 8. Do you need to be an expert to do the rest of the math? Are the projections for the other redevelopment sites similarly overestimated and overstated, either individually or in the aggregate? Too bad that the town's decision makers wouldn't even consider that possibility before committing us to the $20 million oversized parking garage. Thirdly, I noticed this evening that there seems to be storage of construction materials on the Addison garage site. Right now, there's a dumpster and a whole bunch of other construction materials that don't look like they're part of the garage. Is that private material? Is that being stored on city property? And if so, is the city collecting some type of storage fee for whoever's utilizing that public space? And lastly, I just noticed on the board docs situation again that there could be documentation posted on some of tonight's items that is not posted, and I'm still looking to be able to read every public document that the city produces without having to go to people to find it to make FOIA requests and so forth, like the capital budget 5-year plan and some of the other additional items that came on the agenda tonight. There doesn't seem to be any documentation for. Thanks.
That's all that's signed in tonight.
Okay, that's it for everyone who has signed in. Is there anyone, Mr. Pervola, hold on one sec. I just want to get an idea of how many we got. Is there anybody who did not have an opportunity to sign in on our signing sheet but wishes to address the council? 1, 2. Okay. Mr. Pervola, the gentleman in the blue shirt, go ahead. Kevin, we'll get to you next, okay?
Good evening, Tom Parvola from Elmhurst City Center. I'm the executive director. We are located at 2 City Center here in downtown Elmhurst. I'm here tonight to invite all of the aldermen, city officials, and in fact all of Elmhurst to our first annual Rock the Block party coming up this September 5th and 6th. You should all have a postcard in front of you. There are also posters up around town, and there have been some newspaper advertising. The purpose of this event is to showcase the downtown area and its merchants, as well as the community as a whole. This will be a 2-day festival, again on September 5th and 6th, featuring free music, food and drink for purchase on the streets, and family activities. This will be located on York Road from 1st Street to 2nd Street, as well as on Schiller from Commerce Parkway with a stage facing towards York Road. There will be music, as you can see the lineup on there. Our headline band on Friday night is Seventh Heaven, which is a very well-known festival band in the Chicagoland area. Saturday afternoon, you'll see we've got local orientation, bands from the School of Rock, as well as Community District 205. And another headline band in Chicagoland for cover bands, Aura, on Saturday night. We'll have food and drink. The food is from City Center restaurants. There will be 14 out on the street, including Francesca's, Armand's, Pazzi Pizza, Pizza Palace, Salseria, Chow, Fitz's Pub, Fitz's Spare Keys, Buffalo Wild Wings, as well as some of our newer restaurants, Tropical Snow, Zanzi's Deli, Goalie's Goodies, and Full of Bologna. City Center will be selling beer and wine. Attendees at the festival will be able to stroll York Road and Schiller, the area of the event, with their food and their beverages. So that will be something different for Elmhurst. We're appreciative of the city supporting us in that effort. There will also be family activities on Saturday in the afternoon. We have our community partners, the Elmhurst Public Library, the Elmhurst Historical Museum, the Lazadro Museum, The Elmhurst, I think I said the Elmhurst Historic Museum and the Park District will all be out staging family activities on York Road from First to Schiller. So we invite everybody to attend and hope to see everybody on the 5th and 6th. Thank you.
Mr. Graff, you want to approach the microphone?
Hi, my name's Kevin Graff, and I live at 233 Cayuga. I'd like to first off say thank you to our aldermen and the Burke Engineering for going ahead and putting together this comprehensive plan today. I do find that it's very interesting about that plan and the changes that they've made. I don't think that they're beneficial any more than the last plan. And I urge that we have more additional meetings on that so we can discuss those options, because I feel that it puts my home and several other homes in that area in jeopardy. We don't have a second and third level home, so we don't have second and third level stories where I can move my valuables and things that can't be replaced, like photos and whatnot, to another area of the house. We live in single family ranch homes. There's 7 of them in this area that is being considered under York Commons. The mission statement of Elmhurst, in paraphrasing it, it says, in order to protect and enhance the quality of life. I don't see a benefit, unfortunately, to me and my quality of life and what it's going to do to my backyard when it does rain. And now I'm going to wonder even further if this thing's going to overflow into my backyard. We can do all the protective measures we can. As somebody well put it one time, they don't believe that if we can't handle it with what Mother Nature throws at us, then that's just the way it is. Well, I don't agree with that. I do believe that we need to fix Crescent's issues. And I believe that we need to look at this further because it's a short-term fix. We're not getting any smaller. The land's getting smaller on every lot when new homes are built, which means there's going to be more overland flooding. The water's going to flow further no matter what they do with the new ordinance and the policy about rain gardens and rain barrels. It's a 55-gallon barrel. If you put one on each of your things, that's only less than 300 gallons. So we need to look at this a little further and design this for a long-term strategy. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Sullivan?
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. I want to thank everyone for their votes last week for the last city council meeting for the unanimous passing of putting forth the 4 pilot projects and sending them to the school board and the park district. It's been over 4 years that you have been working on this project, and I thank you all for your work. I thank the Public Works Committee, who puts in a whole lot of long hours on their committee nights especially, and anyone who served on the Public Works Committee during that period of time. My neighborhood's been coming actually for more than 5 years, so we really appreciate it, and we want to thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. Anyone else who has not had an opportunity to sign up that wishes to address the council? Seeing none, that closes the public forum portion of our meeting. On to agenda item number 5, announcements. Any announcements from the dais? No announcements from the dais. On to consent agenda item number 6. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda that any council member wishes to have removed for additional conversation, comment, or potentially to vote no? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. 6.13.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
6.13.
6.13. 6.13. Okay. Any other agenda items anybody wishes to have pulled? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus agenda item 6.13. Motion by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Wagner. Clerk Spencer.
Healy.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf, absent. Deuter. Aye. Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Volumsky. Aye. Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin, absent. Honquist,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Mullenor.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays. Motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 6.13 is approved. Motion carries. On to the one pulled item, 6.13. It is a report of DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the applicant's request for sign area and sign setback variations. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for the City Council approval. Signed by Scott N. Levin, Chairman, Danny Palumsky, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner.
Okay, this is a report of DP&Z. I will entertain, to put it before us, I will entertain a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Palumsky, second by Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Palumsky, this is your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an application from Peterbilt. There are two parts to it. One is a setback and the other one is for sign area. The setback is unique. Well, first, the situation of the building is unique. Its address, well, the signs are going to be, or requested to be put on Industrial Drive.
Alderman Palumsky, I hate to ask, can you
Yep, thanks.
shout into the microphone, please?
The request is to have signs on Industrial Drive, though the address is at the cross street, Diversey. So, in part, the business, Peterbilt, would like to have some more visibility from Industrial Drive where there's a little bit more traffic. The request related to the setback is a little bit deceiving. There is a setback required. However, there's about 20 feet of a parkway, so the sign will indeed be set back. And the second piece of this is the sign area. Again, this is approved by the commission and by the committee. The area, as it stands, is not to exceed 100 square feet. When you look at just the area of the letters, it's 119 square feet, 152 with the entire sign. There were no complaints. We didn't hear from any neighbors within this area. This is fully located in an industrial area. So I'd like to know if I can, are there any questions?
Okay. Alderman Bram, you're the one that requested this be pulled. Do you have a comment or question?
Yes, sir, thank you. My concern over this is what was the criteria used to determine the 50% increase from 100, which is allowed, 100 square feet for signage, wall signage, to 100 and whatever that was, 50 odd feet, 152, I believe, square feet. The signage, as Alderman Palumsky has stated, is being requested for Industrial Drive. Industrial Drive is not a major highway. The speed limit is 30 miles per hour. In regards to character of the neighborhood, I don't see any large signage in that vicinity. The petitioner themselves, they actually made comments that under one of the variation standards, it's the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. And to paraphrase, I believe it was under there, in one of the areas of the application, it was paraphrasing that they would like to save money from utilizing the signage from their Bensonville location. I don't see that as a unique circumstance. I don't see that as a plight. I think what is being allowed is 100 square feet is sufficient. Also was made mention in the application, or maybe ZP, or Zoning Planning Commission minutes, was in regards to visibility. They mentioned visibility on Grand, which would not, no matter what large sign there is on the building, you wouldn't be able to see it from Grand Avenue anyway, since this is about a half a block off of Grand. So I don't see at this time on how I could support something. The Zoning Commission did move forward with this, the majority, but I will note that two of the commissioners did vote nay. on this application, so there was obviously some concern from a commission perspective as well. So I guess if the committee has anything to add on why they feel that not only a 0-foot setback is needed due to unique circumstances, which again, I don't know what those are, but why we would allow a 50% increase from 100 to 152 square feet for signage on the building itself.
Okay. Does anybody on the committee wish to share some more of the thinking that went on? Seems to be a debate
And
among the
hopefully
committee.
Alderman Mulliner can add too. I think that having a business come to Elmhurst because they had to move, because they could no longer stay at their site, and then use their existing signs, I think that is unique. It doesn't typically happen. And I think that we welcome the opportunity to talk about the possibilities of new businesses coming when they can no longer stay where they are. And I think maybe
Alderman
Mulliner
Mulliner?
can add.
Let me add a couple of things. A couple of unique things that are about this is that one of the things they were trying to do was to keep the traffic as much as possible on Industrial Drive. Diversey is a smaller street. It's much more difficult to navigate as far as with semis and things, and they wanted to make sure that their traffic could get in as easy as possible. And from Grand Avenue, a larger sign, but does make it a little bit easier for them to identify that location rather than getting lost on Diversey. So if they turn down Industrial Drive, they're going to see the actual sign. And these were some of the things that we were looking at as far as this. This is a great opportunity for us to bring in a business, to allow them to have signage right there on Industrial Drive. And not, yeah, it does exceed our signage requirements, but the reality is we're trying to draw business into town, and on Industrial Drive, it'll be minimal impact on the rest of the area.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Brand.
Yeah, just a couple comments to those statements. In regards to the larger street being Industrial Drive and semis along those lines, I don't know on how that would matter. In this instance, the driveway is on Diversey. It's not on Industrial Drive, so I think that, at least in my perspective, is irrelevant. Signage in regards to people trying to find the building with a 50% increase of the sign, I don't think that matters if it's per our code or a 50% increase. A sign's a sign. And like I said, the speed limit is 30 miles per hour. And I believe most people today have a GPS system where they could just input addresses, and the sign size shouldn't make any difference. I just want to say, once again, is according to the own application, it did mention in regards to cost-saving measures of reusing a sign. And I understand that, and I get that, especially in hard economic times. But this isn't anything slight. This isn't a 10% increase here. This is a 50% increase. This isn't anything slight in regards to the monument sign that's being proposed. It's not meeting the excuse me, the 6-foot setback. It's saying, let's put it right on the setback, or 0 setback altogether. I mean, I think it's above and beyond. I don't think if we don't move forward with the signage increase of 50%, that the business is not going to move into Elmhurst. I think that's irrelevant. I haven't seen a case in the Zoning Planning Commission meeting minutes, nor, at least from my perspective, nor in the DP&Z committee meeting minutes, that warrants anything what is the typical 3 variation standards: plight of the owner due to unique circumstances, alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and as I scroll down for the last one, the property is in question, cannot yield a reasonable return. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other comments? Clerk Spencer.
Mulliner. Oh, excuse me, that's right. Alderman Palumski.
Aye.
Aye. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkauf, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin, absent. Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
11 ayes, 1 nays, 2 absent.
11 ayes, 1 nay. Motion carries. Agenda item 6.13 is approved. On to agenda item 7, committee reports. There's one report out of Finance. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council approve the proposal from Sikich LLC for consulting services to facilitate a strategic plan development process for the City of Elmhurst for a fee not to exceed $24,975. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Bob Dunn, Vice Chairman, Stephen W. Hipskin, and Marty Deuter.
Okay, to put this before us, I'd ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. A motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Dunn. Alderman York, your report.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just wanted to bring this up real quick, and this has been something that's been on the city manager's radar, and I think something that the city of Elmhurst is definitely in need of, a strategic planning process. And I think the most significant thing in here is that this planning process will include input not only from elected officials and staff, but public as well. There will be workshops held to get ideas. We'll also use the citizen survey as a tool for this process as well. So this is something that we need to do. It's time to do it with all the issues that are going on in the city, and ask for your support. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions as it relates to this committee report? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
York.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Levin, absent. Healy.
Aye.
Heimquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Report 7.1 is approved. On to agenda item 8, reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. 8.1, Mayor Morley. Couple of things to report on this evening. First, as the City Council is aware, the City Council, there was during our last council meeting, there was unanimous, it wasn't anonymous, and it was unanimous. The approval and direction out of Public Works regarding prioritization. Their report came out and it was unanimously approved. And the gist of that report was a prioritization of stormwater projects, 2 for the schools, 2 for the parks. The gist of that report was an instruction or direction given to myself and the city manager to write a letter with what I will call a formal ask to the other governmental bodies involved. City Manager Grabowski and I took our time crafting a letter. We wanted to make sure we got it right, and hopefully encompassed what the City Council asked us to do. So last Friday, we sent letters to the Park Board, specifically at the Park Board, President Ubriaco, Jim Rogers, the Executive Director, and the entire Park Board. And then we also sent a similar letter to President Jim Collins, Dave Pernod, Superintendent, and the other school board members. They are in receipt of those. We sent those electronically on Friday, and I think we believe have since sent out hard copies. Among other things in the report, we did inform them of our prioritization, and we also asked them, letting them know that we're at a point where we would have to spend significant dollars from a engineering standpoint if we move forward, and we believed it was most prudent to get their approval and ask for their board's approval on these projects before we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. We'd like to know that we have their consent to work with them on the land that it involves. So that went out. Alderman should have received a copy at this point. Following up with that, we actually had a communications meeting. That's the communications group that I put together about a year ago when I was elected, that involves cities, parks, and schools. We had that meeting this morning. Alderman Polumsky and Alderman Kennedy were in attendance. And we had what I would consider a very productive conversation, in addition to, discussing a little bit the letter that went out to them. We are drilling down every meeting a little further into the engineering of some of these projects, and we're discussing timelines. The one thing I forgot to mention in the letter is that we have requested to hear from them by the end of September. We figure that gives them about 6 weeks, 2 or 3 meetings, and certainly any questions they have, they can direct them our way. But it was a positive meeting this morning. The other thing I would add is that since I've been mayor, I've had an opportunity to meet with a couple of folks at Elmhurst College on an ongoing basis. I think that we've got what I'll call a world-class college just steps from downtown. And I was speaking with Dr. Alan Ray about how, we have a terrific city and a terrific college, and we almost exist isolated from each other. And he and I both agreed that we should look to work together. In fact, I know that Elmhurst College is making a considered effort to involve the city and involve their students in the city. That having been said, I've been working with Tracy Tomasetti. She works at Elmhurst Partners, which is a division of Elmhurst College, and they have announced a small business institute, which is going to be a 2-series education program really for local businesses. One of them is centered around starting and growing your business, and the other is about interpersonal skills and how they affect your business. And I think it's a good thing. I know that they've been talking to the chamber about this, and one of the things they've asked me to do is they're going to be offering scholarships or a voucher for local businesses or local folks to attend these classes for free, and they asked me if I would participate and help select those. So you'll see we're just in its infancy. The classes start in the fall. You'll see a press release. We're going to work with Elmhurst College, get something out in about the next week, and I think it's kind of exciting. I like it's actually bringing Elmhurst College into the city, and I think it's a good thing and something we look forward to in the future. And that's it for me, City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I have a number of items to update the council on before we get to the capital budget. A few weeks ago, Alderman Bram had asked about air traffic over Elmhurst, and I had indicated at the last meeting that I was having some trouble getting in contact with anyone. As it happens, Alderman Levin knows the counsel for the FAA, and so he and I were able to get in touch with the manager of the Chicago Area Modernization Program in the office of the FAA, Ms. Christina Druitt. We had a phone conversation with her to ask what was going on. I think everybody understands that there's been more noise complaints as of late, and I'll explain why that is. A little bit of history, please bear with me. Some of you know, some of you may not know that O'Hare was built some time ago with diagonal runways, which are no longer considered modern design. They are now modernizing O'Hare by building parallel east-west runways, as they are doing in most busy airports, including Dallas-Fort Worth and Atlanta. This plan was approved in 2001. The City of Chicago owns and manages the concrete at O'Hare, and the FAA manages both the operations for the ground and the sky of the airplanes. In the O'Hare modernization plan, there will be 6 east-west runways and 2 parallel diagonal runways pointing southwest and northeast. So the diagonal runways that stay are 4 left, 22 right, and 4 right, 22 left. It's anticipated.
Repeat those again, Jim.
And let me use the pointer over here. They are 4 left, 22 right, and 4 right, 22 left. It's anticipated when the additional runways are built that run east-west, that the 2 that run on the northwest vector will be decommissioned. So with the new east-west, what we were told was that with the new east-west runway configuration, arrivals will essentially stop for 42 right, 22 left, which is this runway down at the bottom right of the diagram, and that's the one that most affects Elmhurst. So arrivals will essentially stop at that once the new configuration happens. Air traffic will arrive mainly from the east and depart to the west, as indicated here, 70% of the time. And depending on weather conditions, it will reverse to approximately 30% of the time. It's anticipated that departures off of 22 left will decline significantly once the remainder of the east-west runways are built.
And Jim, when is that? Any idea?
The modernization program goes, I believe, until the end of 2015. On October 17th, let me switch slides here. Here's another view of what the eventual full build-out looks like. So I believe they have to extend this runway and build, let me go back, build this runway. By law, I learned by state statute, O'Hare can only have 8 runways. I was not aware of that. Another view at what's going to happen and what did happen. On October 17th of 2013, the new runway 1028 Center, which is this runway, all right, I'll point it out over here as well, opened. And I think traffic on the runway that affects Elmhurst significantly was reduced significantly. As I said before, there's one more runway to be added, which is 928 Center in 2015, right here, and the extension of the other. So they started using the new runway in October. In April, the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, that's April of 2014, made a recommendation to discontinue use of 32 left, 14 right, which is this angled runway, right here, due to some close calls at other airports. There was a Tribune article that kind of summarized that, and I've put something at your position tonight that came from the FAA website, which talks about converging runway operations. So again, what I learned from that is that essentially, if planes are using this runway, that planes using this runway, the operation of that as they're landing, if they need to do a touch and go or a go around, could interfere with traffic on 32 left. So the NTSB made a recommendation to no longer use that runway, and the FAA listened to the NTSB recommendation and essentially closed 32 left, 14 right. So with that, they took the traffic from that runway and divided it to this runway and this runway, for the most part. There's certainly exceptions to it, and I'm sure if there's any pilots listening, they're cringing as I talk about all of this. But essentially, the runway that affects Elmhurst increased, I can't say 50% of traffic, but a significant amount of traffic. And also the runway that heads to the west, which would be Wooddale and Itasca, received a significant amount of traffic increase as well. Now, also to note is when this new runway was open, significant traffic from the Chicago area, or significant complaints started coming from the Chicago area, which is right over here. Those are complaints that really O'Hare had never heard before. So it's essentially not only Elmhurst that is noticing more traffic and more noise, but it's a regional issue. After the FAA closed 32 left, the city of Chicago proceeded with some construction on the taxiways around that runway, which truly closes it to any traffic. So not even in emergency situations can they use that, is my understanding. That construction is expected to end in November of this year, at which time the FAA will conduct an environmental impact study on the converging runway operations, and they estimate that'll take 6 months. In November, assuming that Chicago finishes the construction, that could open the runway to traffic, but it does not guarantee that it will open the runway to traffic. Ms. Druitt from the FAA said that, as I said, the EIS should take about 6 months, and at that point, determination will be made to opening up 32 left, 14 right for 2015, and that's assuming that all the construction, and that, again, that's the diagonal that points to the northwest, and will significantly take traffic off of the runway that points at Elmhurst. Ms. Druitt also commented that the FAA's air traffic organization is developing and reviewing tools that may bring additional use back to 32 left once it becomes operational. Alderman Levin and I then had a follow-up conversation with Congressman Quigley's office. He has become involved in this, and in fact, it's become the #1 local issue for his office. Additionally, Congresswoman Schakowsky and Congresswoman Duckworth have become involved. They've received a significant number of complaints on air traffic, as we can imagine. They've also talked with the FAA and O'Hare and City of Chicago officials. They are pushing as hard as they can to get 32 left open again, so that it'll distribute the air traffic a little bit better than what it is now. I also contacted former Mayor Marcucci to kind of pick his brain on where it's been. He was heavily involved, if you recall, when the O'Hare Modernization Plan was being considered. He certainly feels for everyone in town who is currently experiencing the additional noise. Commented that certainly it's going to get better, and that's what we agree. I found this little video clip on the OMP website, which illustrates where we were in 1979 to where it's going once the OMP is finished, the O'Hare Modernization Plan. So Mike, if you can scroll down to the bottom left corner and click play, I think the council will appreciate what's going to happen. So as you see the timeline goes along, you'll see it kind of morph. This is the noise contours that are measured by the City of Chicago. So you can see it shrink and also get more defined. And that's a product of better airplanes and also finally the final product, let's call it, of the O'Hare Modernization Plan. See the impact to Elmhurst is significantly reduced at full build-out, and once all the new runways are installed and those that are decommissioned or plan to be decommissioned are decommissioned. So I guess in answer to Alderman Bram's question of how do we reduce the noise, right now we're in the same situation as a number of other communities that are experiencing that increase. The O'Hare officials, the FAA, the City of Chicago are hearing it from a significant number of people. They understand that. And until at least November, when construction is done, it doesn't appear there's going to be a change. We will press the FAA and the City of Chicago as much as we can, especially through Congressman Quigley's office and Congressman Duckworth's office, to push for that to help the residents here.
Okay, one thing I'll add, or two things, is ultimately if they get to what's shown on this map, the very end of this timeline, it is going to get better. You'll see a significant reduction of that lower right-hand corner, I think that's 4 right, the diagonal runway at the lower right-hand corner of O'Hare, and the majority of the traffic will be east-west. In addition, I did have an opportunity to attend a DuPage Mayor's breakfast Saturday morning, and this was a hot topic. As City Manager Grabowski mentioned, our local representatives are also highly engaged, and I actually have a meeting set up with Congressman Quigley a week from today, and I'll bring back an update, but I know he's heavily involved in it, and I look forward to meeting with him. Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Manager Grabowski, for this update. I do appreciate it. It is something that I have not only heard from my ward residents, but throughout the city of Elmhurst, especially further south. The concern, though, if you can go back to the slide that shows current runways and future runways, that one, is there one other one? That one. That one's good enough. Anything in orange, right, is future. So the concern right now is for our, what is that, dash 22L, the diagonal runway that really impacts the northeast and northwest section significantly, in other parts of town less significantly. Ever since they put in the other runway, which is the furthest north runway, and my eyesight's just not that good, the one in yellow, has significantly reduced. The concern, again, is not the diagonal 4R-22L. The concern is the current east-west runways and how they're banking to go south instead of heading due east or due west and banking over Elmhurst. That is why today, central and southern Elmhurst is seeing airplanes that they haven't seen today or in the past. That is the main concern that I've heard from non-Third Ward residents, is that they're hearing and seeing airplanes overhead that they've never seen before. And the reason is because of that 10L22R, I can't read that, whatever that runway is, that one east-west parallel runway is banking over Elmhurst. Once the southernmost runway is put in, it's only going to get worse if they continue to not go due west or due east. If they continue to bank, they're going to be banking over Elmhurst, and more of the center of town and more of the southern part of Elmhurst is going to see a large impact of, not significant noise impact, but impact from a standpoint of they've never had airplanes overhead before, and they will see them in the near future. So that's the concern I wanted to make sure we're on top of, because I'm glad to see the parallel runway situation from my ward perspective, because it greatly reduces that diagonal runway use. We were told all along, and former Mayor Marcucci would concur, is that that diagonal runway would be in just bad weather situations. That's the only time it would be used once all the east-west parallel runways go into effect. But what we as a city need to keep on top of is that banking situation and how it impacts us, because it will get worse and it will impact more of the city of Elmhurst as time goes on. No matter how great and the newer airplanes are, you're still going to see more and hear more in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Any other O'Hare comments? City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Kopp to pull up another slide, and I want to address the shopping district trolley service. At the last city council meeting, a question was raised, and at the Public Affairs and Safety Committee meeting on August 11th, the idea of a mass transit people circulator was discussed, essentially a trolley. This idea has been around Elmhurst for many years, as I understand it, and in fact, it was presented to me almost 3 years ago by some restaurant owners as I was making my rounds being the new manager. Elmhurst enjoys many shopping and entertainment areas, the three largest, of course, being City Center, York and Villette, and Spring Road. And believe it or not, some residents haven't visited these and probably don't know which businesses are in each district. So the idea of a mass transit trolley circulating to each of these is being considered. This would encourage residents to board the trolley at any of the three retail dining locations and ride to one or all of the others at no cost. It would promote Elmhurst businesses and provide a safe, fun, and unique experience. So as staff and I talked about this, I'm proposing a trial period of 6 weeks for this trolley. starting the weekend of September 5th and 6th and running through October 10th through 11th. We'll measure ridership, talk to the retail and restaurant owners, perhaps survey riders on the experience and benefits to all involved. The trolley would be leased with a driver, and we would provide an extra security person on board. On Fridays, we propose the service would run from 6 p.m. until midnight, and on Saturdays from noon until the same time as Friday. This would encourage residents to use residents and families to use the service for shopping, lunch, entertainment, dinners. The estimated cost right now is between $10,000 and $15,000 for the trial period. Funds are available in the economic development budget from projects which will not be spent this fiscal year. Again, it encourages residents to stay in town, shop locally, and the spending is under the city manager's limit and authority, but seeing as this was discussed at committee, it was asked about at the dais, I talked to the mayor a little bit about it, and I'd like to gain a consensus from the city council to move forward with this. If you look at the map that's on there, it's a little hard to see, but there's just conceptually 6 stops, all at public parking facilities. So starting in this area, the parking lot next to the bank and Crescent Court, heading north to the parking lot just south of City Hall at Palmer Drive and York Street. Then on to Addison at the surface lot, making its way south. Somewhere in the Wilder Park area, there's, I think, 3 parking lots that are available at our Park District, so we would want to talk to the Park District about that. Heading to the Spring Road area, there's a parking lot at Prairie Path and Eggleston, essentially. And then looping around to the Villette Shopping District, the parking lot that is where the farmers market is held behind the Knights of Columbus Hall. We anticipate the route to take an hour, depending on how long the trolley needs to wait at each stop. But it would be available on a continuous loop for those 2 time periods. And I think it's something that we're willing to give a try. I've talked to a number of residents, I've talked to a number of business owners who are very much in favor of this. And as I said, it's been talked about for a number of years. I'm proposing we move forward with it.
Thank you, City Manager Grabowska. Alderman Mulliner, you want to comment?
Yeah, a couple of things. We have discussed this a number of times. This isn't the first time that the council's discussed this. I've been here for a long time. And our concern that we had in the past, and I continue to have with this, is we're isolating a very small number of businesses. There's businesses up in the 3rd Ward that won't get touched by this. You have Christopher's that's up there. I understand they're not open in the evenings, but you've got other businesses that are restaurants that are up on Lake Street that aren't going to be touched by this. And it seems to me as if we're playing a great deal of favoritism toward those. I guess that the other thing that bothers me right now about this is that I would hope that this would follow our normal procedures, and our normal procedures require this to go through a committee meeting and have a committee decide what's appropriate and make sure that they've reviewed all of the issues that are in front of us. You know, I look at the south end of town and I say there's, you know, 6 restaurants down there that I'm sure would like to have a trolley service, a free trolley service, drop off people in front of their businesses. There's places up in the north side of town that would. So I'm concerned about the fact that this is going and circumventing our normal procedures. I understand that the concept is that it's a pilot program, but considering that we've discussed this more than once while I've been on the city council, and it's been shot down every time because of the issues that have come up from staff members, I believe that we really need to send this to a committee. Public Safety and Affairs is the appropriate committee, and have them discuss this as we have in the past and normally. My other concern, quite honestly, is that it is within the city manager's authority. However, if you read the code carefully, the city manager's authority is money that's already previously allocated in the budget, with the exception of emergency purposes, and that's all clearly stated in Chapter 2. The only way Chapter 3. And the only way that that can be circumvented is to go through a committee process and say that we want to add something to the budget, and that's really what we're not doing by doing this. So I do have some concerns about this. I think the idea is great, but I think we need to make sure we're not missing some things here.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few of the similar concerns as Alderman Mulliner, but I'm not going to rehash those. However, what I want to ask is, assuming we do something along these lines and understanding that this is a pilot program, how are we going to measure success? What does success look like during the trial period? Is it ridership? Is it a boost in sales tax? Is it a boost? What does success look like, so that if we deem it to be a success and we want to continue it, then what? How are we going to fund it? How are we going to do this? I'm a little concerned that if we move forward with this, it's a very short time frame till the program begins. How are we going to get the word out? Did we explore sponsorship opportunities? Because there's clearly be some of those. So we can get over those, but my bigger concerns would be, what does success look like? And if we are successful, what happens next?
Let me add to that. As Alderman Mulliner mentioned, and a couple of folks have mentioned, I probably first heard of a similar idea about 6 or 7 years ago when I first got on the council. I know that Alderman Bram has put forth a referral that is similar to this. And I do know that it went to Public Affairs. And at the time, and this was brought up in the last meeting, it was my misunderstanding that additional information was asked for by the committee. I've since had follow-up conversations with Alderman Wagner, Chairman Wagner in this case, with his committee, and also City Manager Grabowski regarding this idea. And it was, the discussion, as I understand it, I was not in the meeting, was around additional information that should be considered when staff considers this. I personally think it's a good idea. I did talk about it with City Manager Grabowski, and I think the emphasis I would put on it is that it's a pilot program. We can study something like this and probably spend more money than the program, this pilot program that's being proposed would cost. Ultimately, I like the idea of some sort of a free shuttle in Elmhurst as kind of a thank you and a service to the Elmhurst residents, and also a thank you and a service to the Elmhurst businesses. I would envision something much larger than this, and I think, like I said, I would emphasize the pilot program part of it. It does only touch certain business districts in town. Ultimately, I see it going to committee if the initial data we get is positive, and expanding it. I would love to see either 2 or 3 different types of shuttles, whether it's a north, middle, and south, something that overlaps. That's my take on it. City Manager and I discussed it. I thought that the pilot program was a good idea to put on the table, and but City Manager Grabowski also thought it was a good idea to have an open discussion about it, and that's what we're doing here. So, Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of my concerns were already voiced by Alderman Healy and Alderman Mulliner. I just want to touch on some of them briefly and not go into the detail that both of them went into. I definitely have major concern over the process on this one. It did take its first initial step in the committee, and therefore then it got diverted, at least in my perspective, to the city manager. I think there's always a difference between what is allowed per budgetary authority and what is the right thing to do. I think in the right thing to do, as you, Mayor Morley, have already stated, I myself have had a similar proposal referral about 10 years ago on this very type of service. It was vetted at length, did I say that? And it did not move forward. And I don't want to rehash the past, but I think that's where we're coming into a concern over process here. This hasn't been vetted by the council. I think the right thing to do would be to vet it by the committee and then the council before moving forward. I make an assumption here, but city manager can correct me, or maybe even the committee with their initial discussions here, that we've spoken with, the police department, the fire department, about any possible safety concerns over this. Is there anything regulatory from a standpoint of handicap accessibility needed when it's a city-sponsored trolley service along those lines? I mean, there's a long laundry list that I know in my past that we've visited, even excluding the dollars and cents aspect of it. I'm a little bit concerned when we tout this as this is for families when this is going to midnight. I don't know what families are up and about in the city of Elmhurst or much of anywhere till midnight. And that brings a different safety concern other than the ones that I've already mentioned. That concern being, are people jumping on this trolley service, visiting various establishments, getting dropped off at a parking deck, and are they legally okay to get in a car and drive home, albeit safe, or not safe, albeit a short distance? Are they legally okay to drive home, and will they make it home safe for themselves and anybody around them? The last thing would be the pilot program. It seems like we as a council use the terminology pilot program for almost everything that we do in small bursts here. Alderman Mulliner already made the statement of the routes. I don't know how this route was selected, who had input on this route, what makes it a safe route or not, but I know from a concern of my ward, being the 3rd ward, especially on a Saturday that it's saying from 12 noon to 12 at night, it would be great that this would be stopping off at Mariano's. Senior citizens can jump on this trolley, go grab some groceries on Mariano's and then get back. That was part of my concerns 10 years ago. So I think there's a lot that should be vetted on this, and I'm concerned that we're moving forward, or at least what I'm hearing, that we're moving forward under city manager discretion compared to what I would deem to be the appropriate process and being vetted thoroughly by committee as well as city council as a whole. Thank you.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo a lot of the comments that have already been said. I think the concept of a pilot program is that you would want to put forth the best possible program, something that we think could succeed. And it doesn't seem like that thought has, a complete enough thought has been put into this pilot. I think normally that work would get hashed out at committee. And I know there was one discussion, but I feel like it could use some more work, like some of the questions that were raised already. Alderman Brand might have touched on this a little bit in terms of who could use it, but I think whether it's middle school kids or high school kids, seniors, I think one of the appeals of something like this is that people wouldn't have to be in their cars. They could leave the cars at home, or it's for people who don't drive at all. And the concept of having the stops at parking lots seems counterintuitive to that. It seems like we'd want to be picking up residents on populated corners so that they would not have to drive somewhere. So that's, the type of issue that I'd be interested in having the committee give a little more thought to.
Okay. Alderman Honquist.
So I wasn't at the committee meeting when this was reviewed, but I had some insight into it, and I've talked to a lot of people in town that have been asking, particularly some of the business, for the city to step up and do something like this. I don't know that this is the perfect scenario either, but that's why, at least in discussion, we discussed a pilot program, something that wouldn't go for that long or wouldn't cost an exorbitant amount of money, and we could see and learn from it what might be a better idea. We could spend a lot of time going through what could or could not happen here, and I understand there are a lot of issues here, but I would think we'd learn a lot from actually doing something. So I was in support of doing something like this to, do something, as the mayor said, for both the citizens and the businesses that have been asking for us to do something along this line to help increase business. My example was there's often people downtown and they don't necessarily get to the other areas, whether it's on Spring Road. There's a nice little wine shop there that I go to and some of the other people that know. And it would just open up maybe some of the city and some of the areas of the city to people, and maybe we learn something from it and either expand it or not do it again or look at doing multiple things with it. But the reason we wanted to move quickly was the time frame that we don't think the winter is a good time to try this. So September and October seem like a good time to try it. Some of the issues that are out there are fair issues. I think that just gives a little background on why we thought we'd try and put this in place in short order and see if it works. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Anyone who has not had an opportunity to speak yet, Alderman Dunn.
I have some concerns over the concept. At this point, all I see is a map, and I know the times that were being suggested that this would run, but I think we need to think through a little bit more the rules on how this shuttle would operate. I agree. I think there needs to be some more stops so that people can walk from their homes to access it. If you look at the one stop just south of the Prairie Path on the southeast corner of the route, it's a pretty long stretch to get back up close to the track in the central business district area. I would like to see a set of rules for how this would operate, and I think those types of things would be laid out in committee. And I understand we're in the end of August, and if we want this to go ahead this year, we don't have much time, but it might be something to consider for next year instead. Thanks.
Okay. Other comments? Alderman Braham?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple more comments in regards to the time frame. As Alderman Honquist mentioned, we don't have a lot of time left in this year, this season, before winter sets in, and who knows, with Chicago weather, that might be tomorrow or a week from now. But that doesn't justify to me to move forward with something at a quick rate instead of doing our due diligence and making sure that we have it as right as it could be. And I do understand, the troubling times, economic times that businesses as well as residents have had. Anybody who asks for the city to step up, I take offense to that, personally at least, from the standpoint of the city does a lot for businesses today, and I do think that this idea has merit, but I don't think we should rush the idea just to get it in at the end of the summer months. I think we should follow the appropriate process, do our due diligence, and the safety aspects of this, to me, especially with the hours that it's being proposed to run, liability, safety, a mixture of families and college students. There's a ton of safety issues here that need to be vetted appropriately, and I think we should wait till next year until we vet this as a committee and a council.
Any other comments? Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are concerns, and I've heard what all the other aldermen have said. I personally think it's worth a try with a safety person on there. They will have the ability, if they needed to take action and call 911, they do it. I think the benefits potentially of doing a pilot or a test are far outweigh what potential doomsday scenarios that could be dreamt up in this. If after 2 weeks we decide that this isn't the best thing for us to do, we cut it off. If we don't think it's where it really needs to be, or it reflects who we want to be as a community, we cut it off. But at least then we've given it a try. And after 6 weeks, if it's something we want to think about doing next year, we do it. If we don't, we don't. I think it's worth a try. Columbus took a chance. We ought to try. Thank you.
All right. Alderman Deuter, and then I'll go to Alderman Mullen.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand what was just said, and I think to some extent that makes a lot of sense. But I also am concerned. I think this idea really is exciting for Elmhurst. I think it could be terrific, and I support the concept of it. I would hate to start a pilot and have it not succeed, only because we didn't give it enough thought to succeed. That would be my concern. I think that's the risk of pushing something out and seeing what happens. I think it's more likely to fail, and I'd like to see us put together something that really does have the potential to succeed.
Alderman Mulliner.
I think you pretty much said what I was going to say. I really think the idea is great. I just think we need to really look at this and have some time to give it some thought. My other point is that I want to get to the question of, it sounds like there's a division on the council, and how do we determine consensus, which we have a couple of issues about based on Robert's rules, and I need to go into those for a minute. Okay.
I think we're close to wrapping up without getting too technical.
Okay, because I got
As chairman, I will give you my take on
and then
what I see the
I
consensus.
can throw mine on if I disagree.
Alderman York, and then I'll take another crack at it.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the concept, too, is great on the surface. One thing that concerns me, I think, is what Alderman Healy brought up. I think how are we going to measure this and measure the success and then determine, going forward? The other thing that concerns me a little bit, and I hadn't really given it a lot of thought when I first heard about it, was the process. And I understand it's below $20,000 and everything, but I guess I'd want to maybe get an opinion from the city attorney on how it fits into our ordinance, and is the city manager's discretion on new items, or as Alderman Mulliner truly pointed out before, so.
No, I had had that similar conversation, Alderman York, and let me just wrap up the conversation by saying this. I double-checked with the city attorney. The belief is that this specific instance is within his authority to do so, and we can get into the details on that if we need to. But I can tell you this, I don't need to, I can see what the consensus is, in my opinion. The consensus is people think it's a good idea, but they want more information, a little more planning. And that's part of the reason why we brought it, and then city manager's suggestion to bring it to council in this manner, because it was turned over to city staff, but he knew that there were some folks that wanted to provide input. So I'm taking the consensus as good idea, a very good idea, could be a great idea next spring, and let's work toward that and answer some of the questions that have been put here tonight. So with that, I'm going to ask City Manager Grabowski to move on to the capital expenditure. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Thank you. Annually, we review the five-year capital expenditure budget. Going along with the budget schedule. Here we are, just to kind of summarize, the CAB was distributed to the City Council in early August. Operating budgets have been turned into Finance Department. And now here we are at the review of the five-year capital expenditure budget. Just to remind everyone, the objective to identify, the objective of the CAB is to identify and create the comprehensive plan for long-range major capital expenditures, which are necessary to maintain, develop the physical assets of the city. We identify those as expenditures of $25,000 or more, which result in acquisition or construction of fixed assets intended to be held for a period of 10 years or more. We have different classifications of the expenditures from 1 to 6, from essential to maintain the current level of service, down to contribute to the economic development of the city, ranges in between. Then we also cross that with an expenditure priority, A through B being essential and immediate to optional but beneficial to the city. Give you an idea of how those come out over the five-year plan as far as dollars, priorities, shown on the screen. You can see it's significant for city in total of $97 million over those 5 years. Now, highlights of 2015 capital expenditure budget are stormwater improvements for flood mitigation, public works infrastructure, IT communications, land acquisition in TIFs, central business district improvements, and parking system improvements. Of those expenditures, further breakdown, as you can see, in different categories from general fund to TIF to the municipal utility fund, parking, vehicles, stormwater detention, and of course the general fund further breaks down to the right in public safety, public works street maintenance, public works public benefits, other public works improvements, and then IT. Funding sources for the KEB include the TIF revenue, the municipal utility fund, which is sewer and water, parking system, GO bonds, and IEPA loans, general fund revenue, federal state grants, and the sales tax, state income tax, telecommunications tax. Here we've outlined some potential large items for the capital expenditure projects, and revenue for those included would be GO bonds or IEPA loans. As we've talked about for the Addison parking deck, those are anticipated to be GO bond issues. And for stormwater mitigation, we have the possibility of either GO bonds or IEPA loans. And then, of course, we're also pursuing different grant opportunities that may be out there. Want to move on to the IEPA loans for the wastewater treatment plant capital expenditure projects. Over the last year and a half or so, we've really pressed the Public Works Department and in particular the Water and Sewer Division to come up with a long-term improvement plan for the wastewater treatment plant. It has been about 20 years since significant dollars have been invested in that. It is our largest capital asset, and certainly a primary role that the city plays for the residents. So Gary Smith and his crew and his team work together to look at last improvements to the wastewater treatment plant and how we can possibly spread those out. Without getting into too many details about what's on the list, I think that'll be vetted more in the Public Works Committee. You can see it's significant dollars as we go through the next 3 and even 5 years. As I said before, I briefly mentioned the revenue sources for the Capital Improvement Fund, which includes state income tax, the home rule sales tax, telecommunications, some small rental income, SSA payments for sidewalks, wireless alarm, interest, and grants. And of course, that gets into the expenditures funded by those items. And that includes the stormwater management and flood mitigation, infrastructure improvements in the streets and sidewalks, building improvements such as Phase 2 of the Public Works Garage, police station improvements, parking improvements, fire equipment, IT, and debt service payments. Here we further break down the 5-year plan by department and fund. We'll get into each of those a little bit, but you can see where most of the dollars are going. Significant portion of that, of course, goes to the street resurfacing program. And for 2015, we're proposing that is the $1.75 million, broken down by the infrastructure fund and general fund contribution. Some of the major street resurfacing projects that we'll be going through, and as you can see as we run through each one, staff has done a great job of going out and getting grants for a lot of these major thoroughfares. On top, North York Street from Lake Street to Crestview, and also First Street from Willow to West. Significant projects that are going to be done over the next year. Further on, and still grant-related, Poplar from Villette to Park, and South York from Harvard to Jackson. We've slowly been moving down York Street, improving it, and this is essentially the last phase of that. Other items that have been on the radar for a couple of years now, and we've talked about city parking lot resurfacing program. As I understand it, Public Works has talked significantly about this. We looked at some grants for green infrastructure. We're still waiting word on that. But essentially, and my understanding is that Public Works Committee has said we need to follow our philosophy, our new philosophy of reducing stormwater in the system wherever and whenever possible. And so what we've done is bumped up these dollar amounts from last year to account for possible green technology within that, whether that's bioswales or some added storage, something like that within the parking lots as we go lot by lot. And as I understand it, that'll be reviewed by the Public Works Committee as we move forward. Moving on to information technology, something that we've talked about during the budget process is the need to upgrade our telephone system here at City Hall and citywide, and of course our annual hardware replacement of computers essential to our day-to-day tasks. So that the IT hardware, software, miscellaneous, significant dollars as we move forward, and then other smaller items underneath that. Another thing that we're looking at is the financial system software upgrade, which is a significant part of the dollars in software and miscellaneous. Moving on to the municipal utility fund. Of course, the other part of cities, one of our critical and core services we provide is water to the residents. We go about that each year in replacing a certain amount of water main. If you recall, we had a study completed by Baxter and Woodman recently on water rates, and that report also noted our replacement schedule and significant number of water main breaks that we've experienced recently. We're trying to bump this up as we move forward. And as you see, the water main replacement down in the bottom left-hand corner is moving up dollar-wise to $1.4 million to start, and then moving up to $2.3 million as we go through the next few years. We experience a higher number of breaks than what is the industry standard. Certainly, we saw that over the last winter, and we'd like to remedy that, and the way to do that is to replace more of our water mains. And then, of course, we have our usual hydrant and valve replacement program and our water meter replacement program. The other side of the municipal utility fund is the wastewater treatment plant, as I mentioned earlier, our largest capital asset. Again, Mr. Smith has gone through with his staff to look at how we can really move this forward, but do it in a balanced way over the next 5 years. So you see the dollars that are on there, and as I mentioned earlier, these will be vetted at the Public Works Committee as we move forward, project by project. One item in particular that I'd like to mention is the sewer lining. Gary Smith is proposing that we look at doing some limited lateral service lining of basically where the residents' sewer lateral meets our main. Apparently, studies show that a significant amount of I&I occurs at that point. That would be a change in our philosophy, because right now we only line the public mains. So this would start to go onto the private side. So that's something that the Public Works Committee will be discussing as we move forward. We've identified some money in the capital budget, though, to move forward with that if the Public Works Committee determines we should go in that direction. Other items as we move forward with the wastewater treatment plant, digester cover, grit removal system, and then the influent screw pumps. We're spacing those out over years so that we're not doing them all at once. Obviously, we need to leave some of these in service as we move forward. And again, Gary will move forward with that at the Public Works Committee and talk in greater detail about that. So really the last summary of all these items for the wastewater treatment plant. Moving on to the parking system fund. As you can see from this, we fund the parking lot resurfacing program, which I discussed earlier, and then parking deck maintenance. We own the 3 parking decks, of course, that we need to continuously maintain. They're on a rotating basis. And then the public lots, which I highlighted earlier. Next, stormwater flood mitigation. Mayor mentioned earlier, and we had some residents speak earlier about our efforts to work towards this. We put significant dollars towards that in anticipation that one or two, possibly more projects would move forward in the next budget year. We just put these up as examples. I think everybody has an idea of where we're at with those. And then next, two of the TIF districts where we have planned improvements or land acquisitions. TIF 1, the improvements, and TIF 2, we've looked at possible land acquisition and improvements. This is an annual slide that we like to show the council to kind of keep things in check. I believe it's state law says you cannot bond more than 5% of your EAV. What the gray shade shows as it varies up and down is the city's EAV. The two lines, the red line shows our GO debt, including the library, and that is anticipated at the very end of 2019 to be 2.7%. The city's GO debt without the library is 2.4%, so well within that 5%. There's some footnotes at the bottom as far as anticipated bond issues. I talked a little bit about that in the revenue section earlier. So where we go from here, the capital is rolled into the 2-year operating. Committees will review appropriate city department budgets, as we've done in the past. Finance committee will review the revenues, and then our budget team, our staff budget team, will review the department budgets for a final compilation of the proposed budget and presentation to the city council. Which gets us to the calendar, just to keep us on track. So the next item, which will come before City Council as a whole, would be in October, which is the delivery of the operating budget. And then we go through the reviews that begin after that. Anticipated council approval in mid-December. That, Mayor, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions or comments to the presentation regarding our capital expenditure budget that the City Manager has laid out? Alderman Mulliner.
I know that this is right now, our one shot at looking at the capital budget as a whole. I guess I would like to request, I know this has been kind of a change since the new city manager as far as going to each one of the committees. I guess I'd like to have an opportunity for us to have one more shot as a group to look at these so that we can bring up issues and concerns that we may have as a group before it goes back to committees to discuss individual items, because there's some items in here, and I don't want to get into each one right now because I need a little bit more time to go into it, but to at least be able to comment on a couple of them so that the whole city council hears those comments before they go back to committee. There's some concerns both on the revenue side as well as on the actual expenditure side, on the capital side, that I'd like to have a chance to express to the whole council, rather than just in a simple committee meeting. I mean, not meaning that it's a simple committee meeting, but so that we have a chance to discuss them overall, just briefly.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one specific question on one of the projects, specifically Lake Street TIF 2, $725,000 proposed for next year. Is that for a specific proposed project, or is that we think there might be something happening, or is that a placeholder? Because specifically, that TIF in particular seems to ebb and flow with activity, and I've seen these kind of placeholders in previous budgets that never came to fruition. I'm just curious as to this specific proposed expenditure. Is that something we know is happening, proposed is happening, we're hearing whispers of something, or we're just putting money in the budget in case something happens?
That is something we hear. People come in, looking at different projects, looking at different properties. Staff gets together, talks about issues, what do we need to do to facilitate that. So it is specific properties that we're looking at as far as acquisition goes, but I can't say that there's a specific project necessarily that's ready to jump at that once it happens.
So it's more of a, we think something might happen, let's put something in the budget in case we need to do something. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I would characterize it more as, we know something can happen once we get these properties assembled, and so let's start talking to those property owners.
Thank you.
Alderman Braham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Healy took my first question, which was a very good one in regards to the TIF 2 line item. So thank you. I almost said Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Grabowski, for answering that.
Thank you.
I will say that on what says slide 29, that City Manager just reviewed the general obligation debt limit. If we take a look at that, this is why we need to be very careful with any projects, especially related to stormwater management, that we consider in the near term and the future. Because if you look at our, I don't know if you can flip back for the audience, but if you look at that debt limit, it climbs higher than we've been in the last, whatever, 10 years or so. And we need to make sure that we take that very, very seriously. We have major projects in this capital budget, being stormwater, being the Addison Garage. So every decision we make, we have to take in the huge consideration, because we're the closest to that 5% EAV limit that we've ever been in, like I said, in the last 10 years or so. And that's just a general comment. And I agree with Alderman Mulliner. I'm not going to speak to individual line items tonight in the capital budget, but I will say that there's a lot being still discussed, and I think there's placeholder numbers for some of those items. There's concrete street construction in here. There's asphalt street construction in here. A lot of good things that the city has planned, one of which is storm sewer repair, as City Manager Grabowski already discussed. Storm sewer extensions, formerly known as, I believe, the rear yard drain program. So I just want to say that I think that the dollars are, I should say the projects that are in here are definitely the ones that we need to move forward on. And I think the only questions are, you know, should we in the near term at all, or is it the right dollar amount?
Okay. Alderman Hipskin.
I'd like to ask Alderman Braham a clarification on that last slide, if we could go back to it.
Well, let's see if I can answer it for you, Alderman Hipskin.
So how come we're at a 5-year, as I see EAV increasing, and we're at 2.46, am I reading that correctly?
0.4 even.
Where?
For the GO without the library and the GO with the library, is it 276 at the end?
Oh, that's it, yeah, as of 2019, we project that's where we'll be.
2.46.
2.7 and 2.4.
Okay. I wasn't reading it properly, so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other questions or comments?
Follow up to that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Does I know it's projected and it's really hard to say right now, but does that take into account the future stormwater management projects and what our possible geo debt would be versus our 5% EAV limit?
Yes, if you look at the footnotes at the very bottom, that details, coincides with the letters up here as to when that debt is issued and what it's for.
So each of those are for the stormwater management projects?
Yes, some of
Okay.
them
Some
are.
are
For garages, too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Some good questions. I do think that it's a good idea to bring this capital budget back to answer some more specific questions. What I would request of Alderman Mulliner and all of the aldermen who do want to ask questions, to give city staff the opportunity to answer our questions as best as possible. If you can, take the time to dig out the specific questions and get them to city staff for our next meeting, and we'll communicate, we'll check with city staff and see when it makes the most sense to put this on there that fits within that schedule that was, I think, the last slide. But please take the opportunity to take a look at the budget. I know some of us are more familiar with it than others, but I think certainly another round of conversation as it relates to this would be beneficial to everybody. So, yes, Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Historically, in Public Works, we have gone through and taken a look at the capital budget as they relate to items that we're, that we look at. So if
Because you spend the most, Jim.
yes, Stephen, it is true. But it's worth it. I would ask if there's any aldermen that have specific questions, just get those to either Corey or to myself. And then as we go through these projects, we can bring up those points so that, as we're looking through them, we're of the most knowledge.
Okay.
We do that. Thank you.
We'll ask city staff to get us a target date of when we'll have another follow-up on this so that we can all prepare. Anything else, City Manager Grabowski?
No, sir, not tonight, thank you.
Okay, any other reports or recommendations? Seeing none, we'll go on to other business. Any other business? Alderman Braham. I caught Alderman Mulliner reaching for his monitor. I thought it was a motion. So,
Maybe this was a report, maybe not another business, but for Hahn Street, we haven't heard much of Hahn Street in the longest of time. The last I recall, we talked about the redevelopment agreement. I thought we were pretty close to sewing that up, if you would, and moving forward. Could we get an overall status on Hahn?
I know that we're in the process of the agreement, and hasn't gone out today. They'll get it tomorrow. They're going to get, Strasburg and Morningside will get our version of it tomorrow morning. What? Oh, well, go ahead. And City Manager Grabowski has a little addition.
Morningside has also submitted their application for Zoning and Planning Commission for the zoning relief that they're asking for. Mike, what is the date of their hearing? September 11th. We'll start that process.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Alderman Mulliner.
Okay, I'm asking this at the wrong time, so I apologize. It should have been under your reports. Do we have a new Public Works Director?
Not yet. We're close, not yet. I'll be happy to announce that when it happens.
Seeing no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Alderman York, second by Alderman Deuter. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.